Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Microsoft Fabric. My name is Mike Tansey. I'm the head of sales at Chess, and with me today I have the fantastic Dave Hughes, our Power Platform and Fabric consultant. In today's session, Dave and I will be running through an overview of Microsoft Fabric, discussing how Fabric simplifies data challenges through integration and automation. We'll be showing some practical steps to modernize your data reporting strategy, and we'll be discussing data governance, which seems to be quite a hot topic for our customers at the moment. Approximately 50% of the time will be spent on interactive demos and live Q&A. So we certainly want you to get the most out of this. But just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping for those that haven't attended a Chess webinar before. So firstly, the session is being recorded, so a copy of which will be made available to you later today. We'll also send the slides. For any questions, we're saving 10 minutes at the end of the webinar. But if you do want to post your questions as you go, so you don't forget them, please use the Q&A tab, which is located at the top of the screen. And finally, we're offering a one-to-one workshop for each of the companies here today. Now, this is a consultant-led session to discuss your specific Microsoft Fabric scenario with Dave and the team. And to take us up in the session, simply tick the request follow-up box on the survey, or you can scan the QR code at the end. Just before I hand over to Dave, so I'll cover off a quick overview to Chess so we can see on the screen. We are one of the UK's leading independent technology service providers. We're dedicated to making it easy for businesses to work securely, anywhere, anytime. We have a team of 280 IT professionals and we support over 18,000 customers, turning over about 50 million annually. We offer a comprehensive range of services, so really across those 6 key areas that you can see on the coloured ribbons on the screen. So just running through those in order. So Connect, this is for your internet, your mobile voice and your data needs. Cloud for infrastructure, platform and software as a service offerings. Devices for your laptop, hardware and networking components. Digital services all around Microsoft 365, Power Platform, AI and Microsoft Fabric. For security, we cover end-to-end security services, and this could be from pen tests and cyber essentials all the way through to managed SOCs, and that's combined with the strength of our sister company CyberLab. And lastly, it's services, so providing consultancy, project management, user adoption, professional services, alongside managed services and proactive support. So our mission at Chess is really to help businesses reduce cost, protect data and work better together. Before I hand over to Dave, I just want to showcase that Chess are one of the top accredited Microsoft partners. We do hold 5 of the 6 solution designations, so the only one we don't hold is Microsoft Dynamics. Within the context of Microsoft Fabric, why that's relevant, so the data and AI designation is obviously very important around the transfer of information. But the other designations that also indirectly support Fabric are infrastructure and Azure for setting up scalable and secure environments for Fabric workloads, and of course the security designation for protecting that sensitive information once it's in Fabric. So these are all demonstrable kind of accreditations that we have been given from Microsoft when we've proved that we have done this work successfully numerous times. And that's the overview to Chess. So I'd now like to pass you over to Dave to kick off the webinar. Dave, over to you, please.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers for that. I guess buckle in, everybody, because we haven't got a lot of time to cover potentially quite a big subject in Fabric. So we'll try and do our best. What we'd like to do is just give you a bit of an overview, if we can, talk about what Fabric is, where it sits, why we think it's so good. And then if we've all made the right sacrifice to the demigods, we're going to try and do a quick end-to-end to create an analytics platform. So prayers, please. We'll watch a video as well on how we can make that process a little bit slicker as well using Copilot. And then as Mike says, Q&A is the end. So what is Fabric? Fabric is an end-to-end platform. So where it differs from perhaps just saying a warehouse, which it includes, it covers the complete stack. So it has the ingestion, the transformation, storage, governance, end results, things like reporting, etc., all in a single platform. It's, I'm going to say unified. It's an interesting one. Everything sits in essentially a same pane of glass. And what that means is the different experiences through that whole process ETL, ingestion, storage, manipulation, etc., is all has a common experience. Why that's good? Because different skill sets only have essentially a single tool to use with a common look and feel around it. Copilot is baked in throughout. So while traditionally we would have had to struggle perhaps with even semantic language things, how do I do a certain thing? We can now use Copilot throughout to help us with this whole process end to end. We also have centralized admin and governance. What do we mean by that? It's all on a single platform, which means that we can apply the same admin and governance to everything that sits on top of that platform. So all the data that comes in all lands in a single area. We can apply governance security on top of that data so that throughout the whole of Fabric, it is all managed very well. Let's dig a bit deeper. Before we do dig a bit deeper, why Microsoft? Lots of people offer similar things, perhaps. Why do we think Fabric is so good? Well, as you can hopefully see from there, Microsoft are positioned at the furthest right, which is in the most complete vision, the furthest to the top, the ability to execute in the Magic Quadrant from Gartner. They are also in the same position from the equivalent for Forrester. So these are some industry metrics comparing BI platforms with competitors. And Microsoft have consistently been, in fact, for the last 7 years, they were the highest for Forrester, and I think it's similar for 18 years for Gartner. So Microsoft have consistently delivered BI platforms, which is kind of why we feel that Microsoft as a platform is a great vendor to base BI solutions on, analytics solutions on. But yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper. What have we got inside Fabric? So Fabric essentially brings together best of breed capabilities that Microsoft already have and brings in some new ones as well. And what do we mean by that? Well, if I throw some names out there, things like Azure Synapse Analytics or Azure Data Factory or Azure Data Lake, Microsoft are bringing all those essentially separate elements together, unifying them so that they're all available from this one platform, making the interface familiar across all those products, making the storage levels consistent so that they all have the same storage. The governance is the same, so applying sensitivity labels, etc. is applied to all data in there. Bringing in all these best of breeds, so there's a complete end-to-end solution. Microsoft Purview is included as well, so things like sensitivity labels are built in, but in addition, you can extend out to the additional Purview services such as data lineage and scanning, etc. Again, all of this is in one place. A little bit deeper then, perhaps. So, and this is, I say some features. Fabric as a platform is huge. We'll have a little look in the demo in a minute at some of the additional capabilities very briefly. But these are just some of the high level points just to bring out, and possibly the bits that you might start with first of all when hopefully you start having a look at Fabric yourselves. So underpinning Fabric is this thing called OneLake. What's OneLake? So OneLake is branded as the OneDrive for data. What's that actually mean? It's a single storage tier across your entire tenant. In your tenant, you will have one OneLake, and everything will sit on top of that. That's not a problem from a security point of view, because everything then is properly managed in things like workspaces. For those of you who may have used Power BI, you might be familiar with workspaces. So we have ways to contain data within it. But why is this good? Because traditionally, organizations will have siloed areas of data, and they may be very hard to coexist, to link, to share data, etc. OneLake lets all the data essentially live in one area, which means we can then apply consistent rules, security across them all. We can link data between different subsets, between different elements of departments, etc. So at the very bottom, we've got OneLake. On top of that, and this is hopefully a common theme now, we have lots of choice for doing things. What do we mean by that? Depending on skill sets, type of features required, we may want to use a more SQL focused storage processing engine, so a traditional warehouse. We may be more familiar with and want to use the processing power of Spark. So we may want to use notebooks in a lake house, etc. For bringing our data in the first place, we may be familiar with, well, we might be familiar with Notepad, Notebooks and Spark. We might be familiar with the Power BI interface, so data flows. We might be more familiar with Azure Data Factory and pipelines. Again, lots of ways to get data in. We might also be bringing in real time. So our demo is not going to be focused on that bit this time round, but not only we're bringing in essentially data as latent data, so daily, hourly, whatever, we may be interested in also augmenting that with real-time data. And we can use them both at the same time. So that's kind of cool. Once we've got our data and we've cleaned it all up, what do we do with it? Well, hopefully many on this call will be familiar with Power BI, the reporting tool, and we'll look at that a bit later. But it's not just ending in Power BI. We potentially want to use other tools to access this as well. So one of the key bits with Fabric is that data isn't locked into only that platform. So we can enable it for use with external tools. We also have other things inside of Fabric to make use of it. So something called Data Activator, which we can use to trigger actions based on data points. Through it all, Copilot. Copilot, big buzzword for now. You may have come across lots of things yourselves in Copilot. Copilot is baked in throughout Fabric. It gives us a number of things. For people who are creating the analytics platform, Fabric can be used to help building tables, the language for transformations, etc. For those of us who may be doing the analytics on top of it, Fabric Copilot can be used to help with analytics. How do I do a thing? How do I work out what is the value of this, etc. So Copilot used throughout. But kind of most important, I guess, ultimately is governance. We want this platform to be available to everyone. Microsoft's key vision for data is that it should be available for everyone in an organization, but it has to be safe. It has to be secure. We have to be able to provide controls to stop it going places it shouldn't do, perhaps. Part of the benefit of having it all in this one lake is that we can apply consistent rules, security and governance to all of our data. And then to help with that process, it also is fully integrated with DevOps processes. So we have the ability to check things into source control, etc. We have processes to help lifecycle to moving it from development to production environments, etc. Again, all of this is built in to the same environment. Whew, lots of talking. So what's it going to cost us? It's a fair question. And it is both very straightforward, and they also, at this point, Microsoft have made it fractionally more complicated. For Fabric itself, you purchase something called a capacity. So this is essentially how much processing power do you think you require. And you can start as small as a thing called an F2. An F2 is approximately £230 a month, give or take. Goes all the way up to a massive size, a 2048 it's called, which is a lot of money. In the middle is something called an F64. Now, if people have come from a Power BI background, there was something called the Power BI Premium P1. This is the equivalent to the Power BI Premium P1. If you are already using that, you essentially also have the Fabric F64 capacity. F64 at that tier gives you a few extra bits that aren't available on ones beforehand. One of the key ones would be, in a Power BI world, you wouldn't need Power BI Pro licenses to access Power BI reports necessarily, if it's on this Fabric capacity. So that's the Fabric bit, processing bit. On top of that, you pay for storage. So however much storage you'll use, that's a separate buy. And kind of frustratingly, I'm not going to say it's not my problem, it's Microsoft who did this. Power BI Pro is still required for the Power BI elements. What do we essentially mean by that? The reporting. So essentially everything that isn't creating a Power BI report is covered by the one capacity license. Creating the actual reports, Power BI Pro licenses. I imagine there'll be more questions about that later on, but that's the high level of it. So hopefully that's enough waffle. We definitely didn't want to kill you all with death by PowerPoint. So let's see if we can do one. So I'm going to try to flip my sharing over to another screen. So here we go. Hopefully everyone can see this. So here's one I created earlier, but we don't want to start with that. We're going to start from a very new, and hopefully again, this is somewhat familiar. If anyone's used Power BI, this is essentially the same Power BI interface, just with a few extra bits and pieces. So let's create a new workspace. And we'll call this Fab Demo. And I'm going to make sure it's going to go onto my trial capacity. This is the bit that gives me the extra features beyond Power BI. First thing we need to do is have a place to land our data. So we're going to create a lakehouse. For this landing. This is what gives us access to that one lake we talked about. So we need a place to put our data. We don't access the one lake directly. We kind of go through a lakehouse or a warehouse. We're going to go through a lakehouse. Let's go and get some data. So I'm going to use a pipeline. So let's call this import data. I can type. Again, those of you who may be familiar with something called Azure Data Factory, this next interface might have some familiarities for you. So let's go and get some data, and we'll get it from our Contoso database. We're just going to bring in some files. And we've got our files currently in a zip file. So we're going to use that one. And we're going to say, please expand those zip files. Thank you very much. But this could come from any number of sources. So again, if you're familiar with Power BI, etc., you're probably familiar with the vast quantity. But this could be coming from an on-premises database server. It could be coming from SharePoint. It can be coming from a website. It could be coming from pretty much any other source you can. But for speed, we're going to just choose this one today. That's all fine. We'll start our transfer. Once it starts warming up, what we'll see here, this might be the bit that's slightly more familiar. We're only going to do the one step today, but we could have this with several steps. So we could be copying data from multiple sources. We could be then triggering some additional processing, perhaps. We're just going to keep it basic for today, just for time reasons. So here's my one job that's queued up. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long to bring it in. Marvelous, succeeded. So what has that given us? Here's our landing lakehouse, sorry. Quick refresh. Files. So far, so good. Next step, we're going to flip. We've done a bit of work with the lakehouse. Let's flip to a warehouse. So I now want to get my data, because this is essentially come from a source system. It's not in the right format for me. We want to prepare our data ready for doing some reporting. So let's create a reporting. Let's create a warehouse. I can type. So this will be the engine for people perhaps more familiar or comfortable with using the SQL language, T-SQL. And we are this time going to get our data using a data flow, so a slightly different interface. And this hopefully looks somewhat more familiar if you've come from Power BI, possibly even Excel background. And let's bring our data in from our Fab demo landings. This is the CSVs we've extracted from a zip file. One of the architectures recommended for Fabric or for analytic solutions in general is have essentially a dumping ground, first of all, where we don't do any processing on our data. So we don't lose anything. We don't reshape anything. So in the future, if we need to make a change, bring something in new that we hadn't thought of before, hopefully we've still got access to all our raw data. So we've landed everything in landing. We want to do some processing on it now to make it fit for creating some reports on top of. So I'm just going to pick one file for now to go through a process. Our currency exchange. So this has come in raw as our CSV file, but as hopefully you'll see in a few seconds, it's perhaps not ideal for what we want to use it for. Getting. Okay, well, first thing I'll do is I'm going to tweak its name ever so slightly. Let's get rid of that CSV bit at the end. And we are going to fix our column headers. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, let's make those a little bit nicer. Brilliant. And the data is not quite the data for this that we want. I want to just look at USD. And then we'll get rid of this column because now it's not going to be needed any further. Okay, some very simple kind of cleanup work. Because I don't want to bore you with watching all of these, what I'm going to do now is, as in all good food demos, I'm going to flip to one that I prepared earlier. We'll have a look at how that looks. So I've done that same process with several additional tables. I've also combined some tables and reshaped them into a format that's now more suitable for analytics. For those on the school, if you're aware of things like star schemas and dimensions and fact tables, etc., I've used this process to do that. So to take out my raw tables from my transactional system into a shape that's more suitable for reporting. So didn't want to make you wait for watching all that. Takes about 10 minutes as well to run. So we'll have a look at how that data now looks. For those coming from something like a SQL Server background, this might be quite familiar. So here's essentially our SQL Server with our schemas and our tables, and here they all are. Lovely jubbly, so far so good. What do we want to do next? Well, next we need to create our model on top. So let's create a new semantic model. Call this sales, and we'll just pick a few of these tables now. It's good to me. And again, if you've come from a pure Power BI background, you may have used the Power BI desktop tool. You're perhaps familiar with having brought the data in using the Power Query data flows. One of the next things you would do then is defining the model, making sure the model's correctly, the relationships, etc. That's the same here. Same thing I'm going to do here, just all in the cloud. Oh, that was too hasty. It just popped up. Okay, so I've got my 3 tables. Let's do some relationships. So order dates for somewhere here. And store, I think that's a store key, store key, store key. Excellent. So why am I doing this? because when we want to look at our sales data by store, we have to have a way to understand the relationship between those tables. What else do we want to do? Well, these have come in as dates, months, alphabetical. No, really good for sorting. Well, luckily we also have a numeric version that we can sort by instead. So let's make that bit work. So if we sort by a month, we'll actually sort by a month number. Okay, that's good. And the last bit we'll do here is create some calculations. So again, here's some I prepared earlier, because there's nothing worse than doing typos in front of everybody. But some basic calculations, just to work out things like average profit and profit percentages, etc. Obviously, they can get much more complicated than that, but this will do for today. So we'll create these calculations. And the last thing we'll do here is make sure our profit percent is going to be formatted as a percent. Okay, we are nearly there. Let's create a report. And this is the bit that would require the Power BI Pro license. So let's create a matrix. And in our matrix, let's put some orders and sales, profit, and where are they? Oh yeah, average profit. And we will slice that by year and month. And they're sorted correctly. Excellent. And let's do another one just because we can. And on this one, let's put country name. And let's put back on our average profit and total profit on the line axis. Let's tweak the sorting slightly. And our normal magic with Power BI should hopefully working as well, where we can do our filtering across. Oh, so that was very quick. Some of it though, perhaps quite slow. So what we'd like to do instead is use Copilot to help speed some of these things up. So I'm just going to stop sharing this one and we'll flip back to, hopefully, don't know where my window's gone, bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can see this. We'll make it full screen. So similar idea, but what's going to run through now is some of those similar processes, but using Copilot to help us. So I'll ask Mike, if you tell me if you can't hear the sound, hopefully it should all come through.
Not hearing any sound, Dave. Dave, yeah, not hearing any sound on the demo.
Can't hear any sound?
No.
So sound is on.
public preview. With this
Yes,
Copilot,
we've got
I
that
can
now,
use natural
Dave.
language to simply tell Copilot what I need done.
Let's come
In this
back a little
case,
bit so you can see what's going on. Apologies for that, guys.
Customer loyalty program to include data about the orders our members are making. To do this, I'm going to create a new data pipeline. Let's give the pipeline a name, and I'm ready to go. Now, instead of manually creating the pipeline activities, I'm going to use the new Copilot for Data Pipelines that is now in public preview. With this Copilot, I can use natural language to simply tell Copilot what I need done. In this case, I want to copy the orders table, and I can select the connection I want to use from the built-in UX and tell it to put the data into a new table in my data warehouse. I also want to get an email if the pipeline fails. So I send this to Copilot in the chat, and just like that, Copilot has created the pipeline activities I need. And now I can run the pipeline and start moving the data over. Using natural language to configure my pipeline is much faster than using UX. And if I give the data some time to load, I can switch back to my data warehouse and refresh it and see my new table. And the new Copilot for Data Pipelines can do a few other cool things as well. If I switch over to the monitoring hub and select a different pipeline activity that has a failure, such as this Databricks data load, I can ask Copilot to help me understand what's going on with the error. Copilot will look at the error codes for me, so I don't have to go searching on my own, and help me understand what's going on. In this case, it looks like there might be a quota issue that's causing a problem, and Copilot has given me a few links where I can learn more. Okay, so let's switch back to my warehouse. Now, I'm going to use Copilot in data warehousing, which is also now in public preview. Let's start by asking Copilot to recommend some queries I might want to run. In here, Copilot has looked at my data and made some query suggestions. Let's look at the top 3 primary interests of customers who have back-ordered items, which I can now ask because we've brought in the additional orders table. And I can run the query and see the result. It looks like camping is the area with the most back orders. Now let's ask Copilot to create a bit more complicated query. Let's ask for a view of customers who have back-ordered orders, their lifetime value, how many back orders they have, and group it by their primary interests. And Copilot has generated the query, which I can run and create the view. Being able to use Copilot to generate SQL is not only a huge productivity boost, but it's also great for helping people upskill and learn to take on more challenging tasks. All right, next, let's create a new report, which I can do right from my data warehouse using Power BI's Direct Lake mode. Again, with Copilot, I can simply ask for what I want, such as a breakdown of customer lifetime value and back orders. And in a couple of seconds, Copilot has generated a report page, and it's a great starting point for building out a full report on my data. So now I've used Copilot integrated across Fabric to get data, to work with it in my data warehouse, and visualize it in Power BI. And finally, I can switch back to my workspace, open my source control pane, and commit my changes.
Right, I'll pause right there. But hopefully that's pretty cool from you all, because I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let's flip back to our slides. There we go. Yeah, part of the Copilot. Cool. How do you guys get to play with it? So the first things, as Mike said, talk to us. We'll gladly talk to you and get the ball going. I'll hand back to Mike in a minute to take that a bit further. But equally, you get a 60-day Fabric trial. What the bit I was just running on was that 60-day trial. They give you the equivalent of the F64 size, we kind of mentioned earlier, kind of halfway. The one bit that it doesn't give you in the trial, and which is why we showed the video of Copilot, is it doesn't give you those Copilot features. So in the trial, you kind of get everything else, but it's a bit of a shame, but you don't get the Copilot toys. But you get to try everything else out. Okay. Microsoft also give you this thing called an estimator. It's currently in preview, but it's a starting point for what actual size do I think I may need. Whether you want to use that or just start small and scale up, it's up to you. But it's a tool, and it's currently in preview as well. So I guess take it with a little pinch of salt. But it's a starting point for what kind of capacity you might need. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Mike. Hopefully.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Dave. I think just to say, really great session, Dave. So it was brilliant to see the live demo kind of start to finish, kind of build that up, and really how quickly you can get those insights and apply those filters. So clearly the demo gods were on our side today. And very cool to see that Copilot is coming into everything now. Although a little bit of a shame it's not part of the free trial, but that's Microsoft always teasing that next thing up, aren't they? But yeah, so just before we dive into the Q&A, we'd like to ask everyone who has a phone in front of them to kindly scan the QR code they can see on the screen now and just tell us how we did. There is an option within there to book a technically led consultancy session. This is with Dave directly. It's a free of charge session for an hour. And it's really good just to kind of bounce off ideas with somebody that's living and breathing Fabric across many different sectors. And each sector tends to have our own kind of areas of specialty that you can bring in that experience into your sector. We also adapt these sessions based on any feedback. So if there's any bits that you'd like to see in future webinars or any feedback that you want to share, please do let us know on that link. So I think we've got quite a few minutes left now, and what we'd like to do is to dive into the Q&A. So if we can kindly ask people to put the questions in the Q&A tab. I can see we've got a few coming in there. And I know some of the customers have also messaged me directly with some questions as well, so I'll read those out as and when. But Dave, if we can start, Vishal's question, is Copilot for Fabric included in the capacity license, or is this an additional cost? Great question.
So great question. Yeah, so it is included in the capacity license. One of the potential impacts on that is that your capacity has so many of these units, so F2, F4, F8, etc. That is shared across everything you do on that capacity. So whether you're doing the ingestion through the pipelines, etc., whether you're using the Spark engine, whether you're using Copilot, that's all uses these units. Microsoft have some great features. They have something called bursting and smoothing. So you might only have a fixed amount of these units in any particular minute, but Microsoft will allow you to essentially spread that over a day. But yes, you might overuse, which is why there's different sizes, so you might need different sizes. One thing they do with Copilot specifically is they allow you to have a second in capacity that you target as the Copilot instance. So all Copilot processing, not the data, but the processing, the large language model interpretation, that happens on the other capacity, a dedicated capacity, which means that it doesn't matter how chatty people are, how much they need help, etc. You won't have an impact on your production server for that bit. But yeah, by default, the starting point is, Copilot's included in the capacity license.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Somebody that's messaged directly but does want to remain anonymous. Is Fabric more suited to enterprise scale organizations?
Not necessarily. Say more. So against the smaller ones, not necessarily. So one of the benefits of Fabric is the fact that from a learning point of view, it's a smaller environment. So everything's one tool. You haven't got to learn multiple tools. Obviously, the big organizations will gain benefits from things like the scale, the governance, because it's spread across the entire enterprise's data. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's more suited to. I think it has absolute value, whatever the size.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Question from Phil. How does Microsoft Fabric differ from traditional Power BI or Azure Synapse Analytics?
Okay, good question. So, I mean, it's a funny one because it kind of includes Power BI. So Power BI is kind of targeted just for that end reporting part in part. Analytics is itself a dedicated tool just for that. What Fabric brings in is it brings them all into a unified platform. So it takes away some of the knobs and dials. So it's a SaaS platform, so there isn't as many knobs and dials to worry about. Azure Synapse Analytics, there's quite a lot of control you have to put in place and understand to use it. Microsoft will take away a lot of the work on that, deliver the power of these tools, so you can kind of focus on delivering solutions. That sounds a little bit too salesy, but that's fundamentally is. It brings all of those tools into this one umbrella in a unified experience, and then on top of it, brings in Copilot across the lot, governance across the lot, etc.
Fantastic. Got a thumbs up from Phil there, Dave, so thank you for that. Next question from Dave in the Q&A section. So which Fabric license is the equivalent of the Power BI PPU license?
So PPU is still valid. So PPU essentially was premium at a user level, and you can still buy premium. So that if you had both elements, that would mean for individual users, they could gain some pure Power BI features on top, things like setting up pipelines, etc. Advanced data flows, certain other features. Broadly speaking, I would say there's less use for potentially less use for a PPU. And if you had Fabric, because Fabric covers a lot of the additional features you'd have in the premium per user, but you still need the Power BI Pro. So potentially, if you've got a lot of people on PPU and you're considering Fabric, you may be able to scale those people back to regular Pro people. That makes sense. There might be more discussions on that, but that's broadly it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Question from Tom Clark, and actually a few other people have messaged me similar things. So, are there any ways to use Fabric without storing the data in OneLake, e.g., replacing SSIS for existing SQL Server instances? And other people have messaged say, what could it connect to AWS or Google Cloud as well?
So yes, so one of the kind of really cool things with essentially OneLake is we can do essentially links into external systems, whether they're Microsoft ones or not. So things like Dataverse, for example. So things inside Microsoft tenants, we can connect essentially live to that data without having to bring it in. So we haven't got to wait for that whole ETL load process. Equally, things like AWS, we can have links to keep that data stored where it is, but still do analytics on top of it. We may want to bring it in and do some secondary reshaping, but we don't have to. SQL Server, we can do a thing called mirroring. So we can essentially near real-time mirror SQL Server data ready for usage straight inside. Just a few clicks. We haven't got to, again, worry about the ETL processes. But yeah, Microsoft are pretty good about, if you want to keep the data in your secondary systems, because they're the masters, that's what everyone else is using, fine. Let us see it, and then we can put analytics on top, and then you can gain the benefit of having access to all that data.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Yep, that's really good. Susan's put in the chat, is Copilot available within Power BI to do the same functions as shown in this demo?
So Copilot is only available on premium. So outside of Fabric, it would still be a premium requirement, which is a bit of frustration. So you'd have to have what was a premium storage. That is essentially now Fabric. So to use even in the Power BI desktop tool, so Copilot features are available in the Power BI desktop tool to build reports that way. You still need it backed by Fabric, or what was Power BI Premium.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. And is there much of a learning curve for somebody who already knows Power BI but is new to Fabric?
Okay, that's an interesting one. So I guess if you already got Power BI, then you're kind of ahead of the curve. So that bit's already kind of taken care of. And I guess the point is you don't have to use everything in Fabric. You certainly don't need to use everything in Fabric from day one. So as you get more comfortable with things, and those bits you're more comfortable with, so we talked about warehouse or lakehouse, and one of the reasons for using one over the other is, for me, I'm more comfortable with SQL Server, T-SQL, and writing stored procedures and things. So I would probably favour that as my engine of choice. Others may be coming from perhaps more of a Spark background or bringing people in to do that. They may be more comfortable with notebooks and using the lakehouse. So you don't have to learn everything at once. You don't have to use all the tools at once. You kind of use the bits that you're comfortable with. And I would say, because it is the same single platform, you're not actually learning lots of different tools. So again, I think from a skilling point of view, hopefully some of that pain is taken away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. So I don't think there's any more questions, but if I may just pose one myself. So Dave, in your opinion, what would be the typical first steps for an organization that wants to pilot Microsoft Fabric?
Okay, good question. Start small would probably be the first thing. So pick a small, something you've possibly even got already. Get the data in, build a report on top of it. So don't use all the features. Let's just see if you can get the basics going. Once you've done that, but you can then start bringing in, well, let's actually work out the ETL processes, the change. So we looked at pipelines and data flows, start using those tools. So I would say, as an iterative process, start small. Essentially, definitely if you can use something like the demo tenancy that they give you, bring in those small bits and bring on the additional workloads as you get comfortable in using it.
Fantastic. Okay, so it can scale up as you kind of build out those requirements. A few other
Yep.
people have said they've got some questions, but it's more about their specific scenario. So actually, that's okay, and exactly why we've got that kind of one-to-one session. So it is a technically led session. If you've got specific hurdles, you've got specific questions, you've got some bits that actually you don't want to share maybe on a public forum, I'll paste the link again, that meeting chat, to book that session in with Dave, and then he can run through your specific scenarios and just share some advice really as to how you can overcome, particular hurdles or challenges.
I'm going to just be really interested and throw one more thing in there from a costing point of view. Lots of people have said they like the idea of Copilot. Those costs we said, if you choose, there's essentially two ways of buying it. You can buy it as a pay-as-you-go or essentially as a pre-provisioned. The pre-provisioned works out cheaper over the year, but you're paying the whole lot. Pay as you go, you can stop it. So, for example, if you just want to play around with perhaps the Copilot bits, which we said maybe you can focus one on that, and you want to do both, you want to do a bit of the Copilot bit and a bit of the trial. The Copilot capacity you could pause at night or a weekend, at which point you're not paying for the capacity usage. You will pay for any storage that's on there, but you wouldn't necessarily be paying for the running it overnight. So you can stop it and start it. Takes a little bit of managing, but it can be done. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's a really valid point. So obviously can look to bring down the cost if you're not 24/7 business, and provided, I guess, you're happy with doing number crunching during working hours. So yeah, that sounds really good, Dave. So I think just to end and say, big thank you again, Dave, for the webinar, for the demo, and thank you everyone for your engagement and great questions. We look forward to seeing you on the next event, and for those that want to book that follow-up session, please do so. We'll send over the slides and recording sometime this afternoon. But yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks all.